So I would like to welcome you back after a short break. And maybe we can open the last session of our conference, which is the success in social work. The best comes at the end. So we have 3 panelists, and I would like to introduce the first one, Linda Maršíková from Ernst and Young. She measures effectivity and impact of public money in this company and measures the efficiency of projects to have the highest possible impact. Mrs. Maršíková will tell us something about evaluation for the purposes of creation of social policies. Evaluation may be slightly remote subject, nevertheless, I hope she will explain us right. So thank you very much for introduction and for invitation. I would like to thank the organizers for having the chance to talk at this conference, and at the same time I would like to congratulate social workers for the yesterday's day of social workers, especially a lot of health today and a lot of energy for really useful work. I think it's quite special for me to present remotely. I'm at home sitting with my computer, seeing only my presentation and illuminated camera, but I have to say that gradually I'm getting used to it, and I guess it will become a tradition, maybe, hopefully not. And hopefully next year we will see each other in person in standard environment. So what is my contribution today about? So I would like to tell you something about the importance of evaluation. Can you hear me? Is everything okay? So why evaluation is important for your work, and why it is not important to develop social policy only based on the learnings gained through evaluation. Why not? Because we are not in the research environment, we are living a real life. So, as I was already introduced, I was involved with the implementation of social policies at the Ministry of Labour and Social Affairs. I was responsible for funding social services and evaluation of impact, what the new activities brought, and also implementation of European funds from Social Fund. Gradually, I started to feel that policies we are creating do not change much, that there is no effort to improve them, even though there were some signals that something does not work in the policies. So I've decided that I should try it from the other end, and that's why I started to be involved in evaluations in Ernst and Young. What we are going to talk about today. First of all, we set the evaluations or how they are perceived for the purpose of today's paper. So I will show you what to do with findings and how they may look like, how the presentation for political spectrum may look like, and at the end I would like to tell you the next plans. So what are the evaluations and what are their types? And at the beginning I would like to say that in fact evaluation may be an everyday activity. We are using it every day, both in our private life where we evaluate our activities, what they are leading to, what are their results, and then of course at your professional life, including your professions. Nevertheless, I have to say such evaluation is rather based on intuition without standardized procedures. Evaluation we are talking about today is more formal. It is somehow commissioned and pursues its goals. It is aimed at finding impact of policies or program or intervention or service. And it tries to find out whether something works, whether the processes including in the activity, whether they lead to desired goals or not. We can, in fact, evaluate evaluations from the view of its implementation, whether it was implemented or not, and so on. Today, I would like to talk about impact analysis today, which tell us whether the intervention, no matter what was the intervention, reached the desired goal, whether we can measure the impact and attributable to the intervention. I guess that from your own practice you know that quite often things happen despite you tried to achieve something. So the best social work does not have to deliver the result in your client you are striving for, and vice versa. So we can say that evaluation reached Czech Republic primarily to European funds, because European funds quite often requires evaluation as an integral part of the project. And I'm really grateful that the result of this conference is also evaluated, which is great. And European funds were bringing us the evaluations. And the implementation of evaluation is still not at the level as abroad, and the results are not used much or selectively, depending on the nature of it, whether they come handy or not, and quite often they end up somewhere in a drawer. Of course, it depends on the recommendations, are they specific or not. Quite often it is driven by the politicians and their will compared to recommendations of the studies. Let's try to explain what evaluation is not about, what must not be perceived as an evaluation, but quite often people swap those notions. Evaluation is not about feelings. So evaluation activity must not be based on perception of your own professionality or on a good feeling, oh, we managed to achieve something. If something happens and if it's good, does not mean always that it is caused by your activity, and I guess you know it again from your practice. Evaluation is not a check, inspection, and in the Czech environment it is again quite often swapped. When we just went to see the case studies, so it is really not interchangeable. Check and evaluation. Inspection or check also is focused at evaluation of an intervention, but let's say from the process and financial point of view, aimed at identifying a failure and potentially calculate as penalty, sanctions, and so on. While evaluation also evaluates a process, looks for failures, but with the aim at improving the impact, the process. Evaluation also is not a research, even though inputs of research are quite broadly used in evaluation process. It describes the reality and looks for hypotheses or theories, while evaluation in fact is aimed at verifying those theses and directing the activities to future activities that should improve the functioning. So over here on this chart you see where evaluation or evaluation research is positioned. So looking to interventions, how they work, how interventions try to help social issues. Social issues have causes and results, and we are intervening in order to achieve a result, to make it happen. In fact, to solve the social issue, moderate it, improve it, or something like that, mitigate it. And then evaluation results evaluates whether the intervention really fulfilled this if so. So what happens with the social issue? First of all, I need to know that I wish to, let's say, mitigate social issue, not to eliminate at all, but to mitigate it, and then set a measure, percentage, and then selecting an intervention, and then through evaluation, I'm proving whether the intervention was correct or not. Then I may, if I may, like to focus on something else than social work, even though I was not educated in social work and I never dared to be active in social work. But in fact, social work may be identified by influencing the client or something like that, or a service. And in upcoming minutes, I would like to focus on the service. So you can state that for social work, it's, well, first of all, we need to identify who are clients. In fact, social workers may end up in ethical dilemma, especially for social workers working in public segment. Just identifying who is actually a client. Is it a vulnerable person as such, or is there somebody, or politician or public administration may try to pretend it's a client, trying to dictate how social issues should be solved. So once we acknowledge who is a client, then we can determine what should be evaluated. And I would recommend to evaluate rather a process, because measuring changes at the level of client, it's not suitable in my view, and it was already discussed also by other panelists. No matter how social work is, clients are influenced also by other facts. Social worker is rather responsible for correctness of procedure, how to work with the client, not for the result of the intervention. So if we should evaluate something in the work with the client, I would recommend to evaluate a procedure of working with the client rather than result achieved by a client. But of course, we are striving for positive presentation in the society. We cannot eliminate formulating the results. That means results, how we influence the clients. So that's the first but, which is important to realize for the future. Society will require us to evaluate also impacts on the client, not the way how we treat the client, the process, to be able to present that social work delivered the desired results and output. But as I already said, I would rather focus on evaluation of services and programs. In the last months, we have made several projects related to social work, social area and health area. Unfortunately, I have to say that social area is still neglected, even though it consumes quite a lot of money from public budget. You see the projects on the screen. Many of them were implemented during the COVID period. That means discussions, questionnaires, surveys had to be postponed because social workers and directors of services were busy with something else than our survey. Social services then, or social area, was not a priority. It could have been seen also in the vaccination strategy we have made for the Ministry of Health, and we had to remind the Ministry of Health that clients belong to demanding area that should be solved as soon as possible, including carers, that means social workers and workers in social services, represent the first line personnel and deserve similar care from the vaccination point of view as healthcare personnel. I just brought several examples with me that we showed to politicians. Evaluation and its results should be clear and transparent. Of course, depends with whom you communicate with, but this chart was designed for top politicians, for Prime Minister and others, where it should be clearly seen what we all know. Our society is aging, and aging quickly. We are one of the most rapidly aging society, both in the European Union and globally. I think we are at the first positions. So it's not about what should be supported, community services or whatever else. Of course, it's up to the decisions of politicians and so on. But state government should also support those who will care for us, carers. You can see it well on the chart. The population of people in productive age will decrease, number of people, and then it will be necessary to motivate the army of professionals, so to say, to motivate young people to study social work. In the recent years, I have to say that the remuneration of social workers grew in last years, but still it's not up to the level as it should be. This chart confirms what I have said a while ago. That means number of people dependent on the care will grow, and somebody has to deliver the care to them. This output is from Europe project focused on social housing support. Again, the project looked well on the paper. The trouble was we don't have accessible social housing. I guess it is also something that you have to solve in practice, but unfortunately it was proven that the apartments that were built were not used by the social group that was in fact needing it the most. The developers rather chose, let's say, seniors and so on, and social work was not required in those social housing apartments, even though in the call it was one of the prerequisites. So over here on the chart you can see how the implementation of policies should look like, not only social policies, but all of them. So I should determine goals at a level of political level, so how to collect taxes, for instance. Then you have to set how to reach the goals, so hopefully selecting from several alternatives, and then the selected alternative is implemented, and social policy should be triggered, launched in practice. Then it's evaluated, and based on the evaluation it will be adjusted. And unfortunately, in the adjustment, it's not happening much in the Czech environment. So even though we are knowing that we are aging and we don't have people who will care for us once we are old, we don't work on the modification, on the change of the situation. So, for instance, we have some social flats built, but then the occupants are not those who come from the most vulnerable group. So I'm reaching the end of my presentation. I just wanted to say that the evaluation is really something that must exist. It's something really priceless, and even though we may have some social policies that are not met. So let's work together on improving the situation, and let's do what we are enjoying doing. Thank you very much for explaining us the evaluation. I think we would definitely wish for having a choice of professional evaluation companies, plus having evaluators, experienced one, also with social work practice. So what you said during your presentation, it was very important, and I would like to highlight it. Evaluation is not about measuring something at the clients. Thank you very much again.